Alright, what's up guys? New deck profile. This is one that I've been working on for the last couple weeks. Really excited about this one. So, there's an archetype called Triamids. It's one of my favorite archetypes. I think it's a really cool archetype. It has to do with field spells. It has to do with, it gives you extra normal summons. It's just a really cool archetype. And I played it for like a really long time. And all of these years, what it really needed was more support, and it never got it. But we have Adamancipators, which are rocks, just like the Triamids. And the deck, Adamancipators with Triamids, this deck is nuts. It's actually disgusting. Like, at first, I was like, I'll just throw a couple of the Adamancipators, maybe Researcher, and then I'll see where it goes. And as I keep playing the deck, it really is just disgusting. It has like crazy end boards of course, one of my favorite monsters of all time, the Yugioh Beast. I gotta get this in a higher rarity one of these days. The Yugioh Beast, the Spell and Trap card negate, has Union Carrier, a lot of different situations, Block Dragon. Like, I'm almost surprised at how good this deck is. But yeah, give it a try, definitely. This is one of those decks you should really maybe plug into Dueling Nexus or Yugioh Pro or Dueling Book and give it a try. But yeah, I think the Triamids actually cover a lot of the problems with Adamancipators, because Adamancipators, unfortunately, will typically just lose to this card. Like, they won't lose to Nibiru because you can play through Nibiru easily, but you will lose to this card. So this deck actually has a lot of kind of ways to play around that. But let's get started. Play 3 copies of Adamancipator Researcher. Basically, it summons itself if you have a rock. And on top of that, if you have a rock, I know if you irrelevant to the rock, but you can excavate the top 5. If you have a rock that's level 4 or lower that's not a tuner, special summon it for free. Almost all of the Triamids are compatible, along with a lot of other cards that we're playing. We play 3 copies of Researcher, of Seeker. This one, basically, if you control an Adamancipator monster, you can special summon it for free, which is tough, awesome. And then, of course, it has the same excavation effect as the last one that I said. Play 3 copies of Analyzer. This one summons itself if your opponent controls more monsters than you do, or if your opponent controls a monster and you don't. So it's like Cyber Dragon, basically. And if you didn't notice, they were all tuners. The first 2 are level 2. These are level 4. All incredibly useful, and it has the same excavation effect as the previous ones. But those are the Adamancipators. You probably know them. A lot of people are playing them. You probably do know those. So, next, we play 3 copies of Triamid Hunter. Now, what in the world are these Triamids? Alright, so, all the Triamids, the little ones, have an effect where, basically, Triamids are a field spell deck. They're a field spell rock-based deck, and they have, all of the little ones have a quick effect to switch out your field spell for another field spell. All the field spells float, which is just already pretty good. But all of them have individual effects based on the field spells. Triamid Hunter, if you control a field spell, any field spell, like you can control Mystic Mine. If you control, and of course Mystic Mine negates activated effects, this next effect that I'm going to read is not an activated effect. If you control any field spell, you can normal summon an additional rock monster. So even if you control the Adamancipator field spell, you can still normal summon an extra monster. But yeah, this one is one of the craziest ones. It gives you a free extra normal summon of a rock monster, which is basically your whole deck. Then it has that quick effect to switch out the field spell. Play 2 copies of Triamid Dancer. This is just for the name. And notice the 2 I showed you so far have been level 3s. This will let you make the Yugioh Beast very easily. A lot of the builds that have been coming out in the metagame, like the online tournaments, can't really make Yugioh Beast because they don't play any level 3, so they can't come up with the right numbers to make the Yugioh Beast. But in this deck, you can easily make it, and Yugioh Beast shuts off like huge parts of people's deck. But this one, basically, you can shuffle a Triamid card in your graveyard and increase the attack and defense of all rocks on the field by 500 permanently. And that effect, of course, is a very good effect, because when you actually like analyze it across the board, like let's say you have 5 monsters, and you increase each of them by 500, you basically just put 2,000 more damage on board and help you push for game very easily. And then, of course, it has the effect to switch out field spells. Triamid Master. This is another one that's very good. You can get rid of a Triamid card on the field to pop a face down card on the field, and typically you will be able. One of the better effects is you can get rid of the field spell. Like I said, the field spell's flow. Get rid of the field spell, and then you can pop a face down card, which is a spawn trap card. It's very useful for the deck. Then we've got the Triamid Sphinx, and that is the entire kind of Triamid lineup that we have there. It's more sort of an engine than like playing the entire deck, but the great thing about the Adamancipators is they have plenty of space. We've got the Triamid Sphinx. This is one that you search. This is like your boss monster. You don't need to play more than one. If you're playing a pure, you play more than one. But basically, this card can be normal summon or set. It's kind of like Block Dragon. On top of that, if a what is it called? A Triamid card on the field is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can special summon this card from your hand. On top of that, this card is like a lightning rod. It's the only monster that you can attack. Your opponent can attack, and it gains 500 attack for every different Triamid field spell. So sometimes you bring this out, it's like 4,000 attack. It's like gigantic, very difficult to deal with. But you only play one, and it is searchable. Then we play two Kawaki Meru Guardian. This is very easy to go into because you excavate a lot. So yeah, like I said, it's very, very easy to go into, and this lets you play around Nibiru, and I think this deck is actually having a very positive effect on the metagame. I think that people will actually begin playing Nibiru less because it's so useless against this deck, because this deck can just, first of all, it can play through Nibiru, but outside of that, it can summon this, and the second it summons this, Nibiru's dead. Then we play two copies of Gigantus, incredible card, wow. There's pockets in the metagame where this card sort of just jumps in, and it's very, very good. It's very good because you can just banish a Earth monster to summon it, and it's a rock. It's searchable off of Block Dragon. On top of that, you can attack into your opponent's monsters and then blow up all their back row. It's very good against the Outlich matchup. If they don't get rid of it, you're blowing up their back row. But yeah, definitely two, and this card needs a rarity bump too. Then we've got one copy of Block Dragon. Could bump it up to two. Definitely could bump it up to two. Very good card. Now you have even more ways to get to it, because you can get to it through Union Hanger, or you can get to it just naturally if you draw it and summon it by banishing Earths. You put a lot of Earths in grave, you really can bump up the amount of that card. 3 copies of Doki Doki. This card lets you basically send a rock from your hand to the graveyard, and then you can summon a rock from your deck with the same level and attribute. And basically what's cool about this is you can discard one of the level 2s to summon one of the, like, Researcher. You could discard one of the level 4s to summon Analyzer, or you can discard one of the level 3s in order to summon one of the other level 3s. So it's very, very useful for that. And it's pretty easy to summon. Then we play one copy of Spell Striker. This is kind of a sort of a random card. It's just an additional level 3 for you to summon. It's a great extender because it's a nice Earth level 3. You summon this card just by banishing a spell. Incredibly easy to summon because you have so many spells in the deck, and it's basically like always a free summon. Helps you with rank 3s, and it helps you with just going into Naturia Beast even easier. Naturia Beast again is very, very, very good against the meta. Then we play one copy of Adamancipator Crystal Dragite. This one, basically, if it's summoned off of... The relevant effect is if it's summoned off of an Adamancipator monster, you can draw a card. That's the relevant effect. The other one is that you can put this on the top of your deck and shuffle, either in your graveyard or from the field, an Adamancipator water monster, which is basically a synchro water monster. And you can... that effect I don't like to use as much, but you can go into that effect. Then we've got one copy of Nahata. This is like a free summon. Basically, if you control no effect monsters on the field, you can summon it. So if you control no monsters, you control no effect monsters. You just summon this, and then you can go into Galleon Granite. Then we play one copy to round out the monsters of Jet Synchro. Now, if you notice for the end there, we play one of each. We play a water, a wind, and a water, a wind, and a fire. And these are... The reason we play these three different attributes is that they're very relevant for going into the Synchro monsters. Synchro monsters all have... The Synchro Adamancipator monsters all have secondary effects where you can... they basically have secondary effects where they have secondary effects based on the attributes in your graveyard. So if you have a fire, they have an additional one. If they have a wind and water, and that's the only reason we play these particular ones. Otherwise, you can replace it with any Tenyi. Then we play 3 copies of Adamancipator Signs. This card basically allows you to... It's let me just move this and start over with the spells. This is basically like a monster reborn for all rock monsters. So it's not only for Adamancipator monsters, it's actually for all rock monsters. And this card is actually semi-searchable with the fire synchro monster because it lets you excavate and then add anything, and it can be a spell and trap card. But this card is just broken in the deck. It's not once per turn. If you summon an Adamancipator monster with this effect, you can actually put any rock on the top of your deck, which is incredibly, incredibly useful. But the only thing is the rock, it has to be a level 4 or lower rock. It can't be block drag. But I mean, most of the time you put a level 4 lower rock anyway. But it stacks your deck, and it's a monster reborn, and it stacks your deck. This card is like probably it's either this or the girl researcher. One of those two is probably the best card in the archetype. So now we play the field spells of the Tramids. Now I'm just going to go out right at the beginning. This is the best field spell. This field spell is just disgusting. It's what makes this deck even more disgusting. So what this one basically does is when you normal summon a rock, you gain 500 life points. So that's base. All right. Then if you normal summon a Tramid monster, you get to discard a card and draw a card, which is very useful for the deck. It makes it incredibly more consistent, especially when you have my favorite Tramid monster, which is Tramid Hunter. Because he basically, you normal summon him, you discard draw, free. And then he gives you an additional normal summon, so you will do it again. You will normal summon again, and then you will again discard draw. So it'll really help. The consistency that this little engine brings to you is very, very useful. It really does produce a lot of just consistency within the deck. It gives you a lot of draws. It gets you into the cards that you really, really want to get into, like Researcher and things like that. Secondarily, these cards all have effects when they are sent from the field to the graveyard. So the amazing thing about Tramid Cruiser, when it's sent to the graveyard, again, this is by far the best field spell of the 3 Tramid field spells. When this is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can search any Tramid monster in the game. So that includes that big boss monster I showed you, includes the Hunter, it includes any of these. It's very, very good. Then we play 3 copies of Tramid Kingdom. This gives all rock monsters, just all rock monsters on the field, 500 attack. On top of that, it allows, when you attack with a Tramid monster, it basically turns Tramid monsters in Utopia the Lightning, Utopia the Lightning, where your opponent can't activate cards in response. So that can actually help you win games. You can attack through problematic situations. On top of that, if this card is sent to the graveyard, from the field to the graveyard, you can special summon Tramid monster from your hand, which again, pretty useful during your opponent's turn. That's what I like about adding the Tramids. It gives you a little more versatility during your opponent's turn, because otherwise, if your opponent just activates Dark Ruler no more, I mean, it's basically curtains. I like having the versatility of the Tramid cards. Then we've got 1 Tramid Forces by Fortress, by far the worst Tramid card. Tramid spell, Tramid field spell, basically. This gives all rock monsters base defense. They boost them by 500. On top of that, Tramid monsters came to Tramid card effects. But when this card is sent from field to grave, you get to add a Tramid monster back from your graveyard to your hand, so it lets you kind of recycle. Yeah, it's the worst. I might even cut it, honestly. I might cut this down. I might cut this one down. I don't know. I've been testing it. I'm pretty happy with the results so far. But there's definitely a lot that the deck can grow. But yeah, a large part of this engine is actually incredibly good. Then we play 1 Terraform and get us into the field spells. We want 1 set rotation because we play multiple field spells. Set rotation actually has a really cool interaction with Master because you can give your opponent a field spell and then activate your field spell, send your field spell to the graveyard, send their field spell to the graveyard, and then you get to resolve the effect, which is super, super cool. Also, set rotation is really, really good with... Set rotation is really, really good with the Adamancipator Water Synchro Monster because it gives your opponent a card on their side of the field, so you have something to bounce. So you can do the whole excavation. So you activate set rotation, give yourself a field spell, give them a field spell, activate this to basically bounce cards on your opponent's side of the field, and then you bounce the field spell that you set on your opponent's side of the field back to you, and you basically get 2 free cards out of set rotation, and you get to resolve the effect of the Synchro Monster. Yeah, very, very crazy. Set rotation is like better than terraforming in this deck. Then we play one copy of Mystic Mind. It's just one of those field spells where your opponent has to respect it. They have to negate it. They have to waste one of their precious negates on this. Yeah, unless they're playing Naturia Beast like we are. But yeah, you have to waste one of your precious negates on it, or interactions. Very good. Next, we play our extra deck lineup. We play, just to start, one of my favorite, like I said, favorite synchro monsters in the game. I gotta get a rarity bump. Naturia Beast, unlimited spell negates, and don't forget you are milling cards off the top of your deck, which is very good for block dragon and stuff like that. And there's cool combos that you can do where you can negate your own field spells to send them to grave. Additionally, you can, when you negate the field spells, every time you negate a card, you mill 2 cards off the top of your deck. And when you mill 2 cards off the top of your deck, sometimes you fuel stuff for stuff like block dragon and what's his name? The other guy, Gigantus. But yeah, very, very good card in the deck overall. Like I said, one of my favorite monsters, period, but, great. One copy of Adamancipator Raptite. This card is the wind. So you have 3 different synchro monsters. They have 3 different attributes. They have secondary effects when you control, when you have a that attribute, which they are, in the graveyard, they get an additional effect, but they all have excavation effects. So this card's excavation effect is that you can excavate 5, and then you can special summon one of the rocks in defense position, which that effect is, of course, very good. And then its secondary effect is if you have a wind engrave, you can quick effect banish a card, a monster in your opponent's graveyard. Then we've got the Adamancipator Lion, the short print Lion, basically. This card has, you excavate cards off the top of your deck, 5 cards off the top of your deck, and then you can add an Adamancipator card. It's one of my favorites because you can actually add, like I said, that amazing revival spell. And then its secondary effect, which is its graveyard effect, if not its graveyard effect, but if it has, if you have fire in the graveyard, basically, if you have a fire in the graveyard, you can special summon, let me see, it's a little bit out of focus there. There you go. It's actually really cool that I can do that. Yeah, but if you have a fire in the graveyard, you can... Jeez, why is it doing that? Alright, so if you have a fire in the graveyard, you can quick effect to summon a monster from your graveyard. Rock monster in your graveyard. Then we've got the Adamancipator Water Monster, which is, during the main phase, you can basically excavate 5 for every rock monster. Non-targeting, you can bounce cards to your opponent's hand. So good. I mean, really, non-targeting effects, and it bounces. Just an amazing effect. And then on top, so your opponent has to respond to this card's activation. They can't just go, yeah, go ahead and resolve it, and I'll see how many rocks you... No, it's not like that. Like, you have to respond directly to this, otherwise everything on your field's getting bounced. And then on top of that, its graveyard effect is, if you have a water monster in grave, you can, when your opponent activates a spawn trap card, you can basically negate it. Then we've got one Gorgonic Guardian. This card does 2 things. You can quick effect negate your opponent's... If your opponent has a monster, you can quick effect negate it and turn its attack to 0. And then not the quick effect is, if they have a monster that's 0, you can destroy that monster. So it's like spot removal, and it's negation. And then we've got Levier. Levier is really good in this deck because, like I said, those Tramids are level 3. And don't forget, you banish a lot of stuff off of Gigantus and Block Dragon. You can get that stuff for free. This card is very good in the grind game because you can make this, and then you can summon like your Researcher back, and then you can obviously activate Researcher's effect and go through that whole cycle. Then we've got one copy of Abyss Dweller. Just it's their best rank 4 in the game right now. One Galleon Granite to search any of your rock monsters. It's kind of crazy. It's really, really good. It can search anything. Search Block Dragon, can search Trimid cards, it can search the Researcher, like this card's nuts. Usually you search Researcher, you summon, and you go from there. One copy of Union Carrier. Attach stuff like Block Dragon, Crystron Needle Fiber, IP Masquerena. You usually just link climb with this, but sometimes you can just leave it and threaten your opponent. One copy of Phoenix. One copy of Unicorn, one Appaloosa Bow the Goddess, which we always summon turn 1, and one Machina Crusader Avermax because I like him better than Boral Sword. And you make him off of IP Masquerena, and then you have a field that's very difficult to get through. But that is basically it. I'm very excited about this deck. Like, I actually have been enjoying it a lot. It's one of the main decks I've actually been playing online. I think it's very, very, very competitive, and it really it covers a lot of the issues that the deck has. It may not be as explosive as the Go engine, because the Go it's not Go engine's not that it's explosive. It's very consistent. This engine just gives you a lot more versatility than the Go engine. I think it can actually be improved further than what I've done so far with it, because I'm only one person. That's why I want to get it out there as fast as possible. Let some other people maybe try it. But yeah, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe.